Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's workplace webinar brought to you by Stafftreats. My name's Eva Evangelou, and I'm hosting this evening, and I'm so excited to have with me the co-founder of Thriving Tribes, Yssine Matola. Yssine, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, Yssine is going to be taking us through core theme for today, which is what is a strong vision and why is it so important for businesses to build one? And Yssine is the co-founder of Thriving Tribes, and she's been helping businesses to grow with that business. So Yssine, I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about Thriving Tribes.
Yes, definitely. Sounds good. So at Thriving Tribes, we support startups and growing businesses, mainly in the UK and France, by crafting scalable HR people experiences, so they are always ready for the next step. And this usually covers talent acquisition, employee experience, HR compliance, team performance culture, all the usual HR bits.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you then ended up running Thriving Tribes?
Yes, definitely. So I've been in the in like HR roles for about 10 years now, mainly tech companies, various industries. And I guess it all came up to a discussion we had with Aurélie, who's the other co-founder of Thriving Tribes. So similar to me, she's been in HR roles for about 10 years. And we were discussing our HR philosophies, what we are doing in our roles, what we are seeing, and it just kind of came naturally to create Thriving Tribes, take on a few consulting clients, and push all those ideas around scalable processes, employee experience, inclusive leadership, all those things we believe in and we think are so beneficial for businesses. So that's how it kind of came about. And I've always needed to keep high levels of activity anyway. I find it great to have other activities than my regular job. I think that it just stimulates innovation, increase the impact that you can have as well, and it avoids you being so obsessed and frustrated with one thing. So yeah, I guess that was just a way for us to live our passion for people development and HR innovation.
Yeah, so no more 9 to 5 for you, Yssine. We're not going back to that.
A little bit around the clock now.
Yeah, definitely. And I also saw from your LinkedIn profile that you mentioned that you have a soft spot for tech businesses that have a strong vision. And that really brings us on to today's theme. So what is a strong vision and why do you think it's so important for businesses?
Yeah, so a vision is aspirational. It's your why. As a business owner, as a leader, it's looking forward and defining what you want your impact to look like and what's the difference you're going to make. You know, like, why are you doing what you're doing, basically? And I think that having it clear in your head is good, but it's not enough. You need to be able to articulate it, to communicate it in a way that people will believe in it, feel inspired by it, and rally around you. I think that's what a strong vision is. It's, you know, being able to get people around you.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So practically, how does a business owner get someone to see? How do they articulate it to, you know, their employees and then their customers? How do you get people to see your vision?
Yes, so as you said, it's really important to be able to communicate it to employees as well as customers and basically all the partners you will be working with. You know, if you're trying to raise money, if you're having intermediary in your business, that's all the people you will need to get on board. So yeah, if you look at employees and prospective candidates, your vision is what is going to inspire people to do their best job. You know, we all want to have a positive impact and we all want to make a difference. So, you know, being able to understand what we will commit our time in and, you know, what all this is about is really important for most people. So yeah, I'd say on the employee side, that's definitely the main bit.
So how do we then break this down? Like, what are the important steps that a small business or a startup can take to actually build out this vision?
Yeah. So there's a framework that I like. It's from a book from Simon Sinek. It's called Start with Why, and it's basically a circle. I think he calls it the golden circle. And so you have your why in the middle, then you have your how, and then you have your what. And it's all about, so your why is what you should be starting with. That's your vision, that's your purpose, that's, everything that's embodied by your leader, by your CEO, by your founder. Then you have your how, and that's more, I'd say, your C-suite, your function leads. That's all about what's the strategy and what's the direction we want to take, and how we're gonna actually do it. And then you have your what, and that's your product, your services, what everybody's working all day, every day. So I think what's really important is to be able to have those three things very clear, very separate. And once you have that, you don't have to worry about because there's a lot of things, right? There's the vision, the mission statement, the purpose, the strategy. There's so many. But I think if you just focus on your why, your how, and your what, you'll be able to do something that's comprehensive, and people will be able to follow you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen a few of Simon Sinek's talks, and I like how he compares laptops. And he's just saying, at Apple, we could have said that we just make laptops because that's what we do. But people are not inspired and paying well above the market rate just because we make really good laptops. So do a whole load of other brands. But the why is, to be different and to do things differently. And I think that's what's, got people on board with that brand. So I mean, okay, so how are you separating what a mission statement is and then what your vision is?
Yes, so your vision is really your why. So that's if you look years ahead, what you will have achieved, the difference you will have made, and the impact you will have had on the world. That's your vision. That's long term what you want to achieve. Then if you look more at the how, it's going to be a bit more practical. It's going to be everything around how you're bringing your vision to life. So that's the strategy, that's the planning, what's your unique selling point, and then you go to the what, and that's the actual execution.
Mm-hmm. So we want, obviously, looking at the why many years down the line, what do you want to have achieved and how have you done that? I guess the next part of that is how we use that to grow a business. So how is it important for leaders to use this vision in order to grow?
Yeah. So when companies start growing, there are usual issues that are coming into play. So when you're growing your team, it's much easier to lose touch points, to get sidetracked. You spend less time with people, less one-to-one time. It's more complicated to give people context because you're just not chatting with them every day as you're doing it if you have a very small team. So it's very easy for people to lose the big picture and to get disaligned. And what happens as well when you start growing is that silos start to create. You have conflicting priorities in between, the different part of your business. And, we have the usual ones. You have your sales department that's, just trying to get your clients across the line. And then you have your product team who's actually trying to build a product. And sometimes it just doesn't align. So you really need, to have a clear vision, to have everyone aligned, moving in the same direction. You need all your leaders to be aligned and able to prioritize and to just, bring back the focus where it should be when it's needed. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the main bit, and that's going to really impact team performance and employee engagement when you're scaling. Then there are a few things that companies usually do when they start to get organized around that. So there's this OKR framework that most tech companies use, objective and key results. And it's basically making sure that you define your company goals, your department goals, that they all work together. And then if you want, you can have your like individual personal goals, but that everything is always moving in the same direction, and that you have just a few key points that you're focusing on at a time. And yeah, that's another thing that's important when companies are growing, because there's just so much to do, and like the possibilities are endless. So being able to, again, to focus and recenter to what we're going to achieve at the moment is really important. So yeah, I'd say that's the main ones.
And that's not an easy task, right? Bringing all of these people to get behind and work on one thing. And you brought up an interesting point about making sure that all of your leaders, as well as, I guess, all the people that work for you, are aligned. So in terms of recruitment, how do you make sure that you're bringing in people who will, match this vision and also match the culture of your company?
So what's really important is to have a very good recruitment process, and especially when you're scaling, especially when you're going to be doubling the size of your team and you're going to be hiring 50 people in the coming months. It's so important that your recruitment process is spotless. The things that you can do if you want to make sure that it's going to be aligned with your vision, it's going to be aligned with what you're trying to do as a company, is to make sure that your recruitment process is as fair and unbiased as possible. So a lot of companies use interview scorecards, for example, where before starting hiring and putting job ads out and so on, you agree beforehand on key criteria. What do we really need this role to be able to do, what the impact you want them to have. And then you have your set of questions that's just focused on those key criteria. You don't have like random questions that are coming from nowhere. It's the same set of questions for everyone. And you make sure that you evaluate those key criteria that are important for you. And that is so important, because when you hire, when you're in a rush, it's just just gonna start to be a little bit depending on people, and like some people are just gonna take a call here and there, and those other ones are gonna do some tests. Some are gonna come up with the most random questions, and we've always, like, I think all of us, we have heard or we have had those questions, and you're like, how is this relevant? So yeah, I think to have a strong database recruitment process is really important when you grow, and always making sure that all the things that you're evaluating relate to what you're trying to achieve as a company and what skills you need to bring in order to achieve your vision. So yeah, I think that's the main ones.
I'd love to delve into this a little bit more. I find it quite interesting that you go with one standardized interview process for every candidate. So let's assume, you have a role where you need someone who is customer facing and can manage customer relationships, but you also need someone that's very technical. So let's assume one candidate has really great customer facing skills and the other one has really good technical skills. Do you not adjust an interview to test, I guess, what is not covered by previous experience? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So usually when you work with scorecards, what you will do is that you would agree beforehand on how important each criteria are. So you will have like a score system for each of them. So you will just be able to define when you create your scorecard, what are the things that are more important than others. And maybe some people are going to score really high in some aspects, but that's not the most important. That's not what you're really looking for. So at the end of the day, the candidate that's going to come up is still going to be the one that are going to score higher in the things that are the most important for you. And also, just because you've mentioned experience, sometimes it's not about years of experience, like some people, especially if you look at tech, and especially if you look at some of the recent roles and like skills that were not as important or just did not exist 10 years back. Sometimes it's really about what we're actually able to do and what's the outcome and what we're able to create in the role, rather than how long we've spent in an industry or how long we've spent doing a role. So what's also important is, as part of your recruitment process, to be able to evaluate, like having tests, having examples, talking about situations, rather than asking just, like questions about concepts and kind of ideas. It's really, to be able to take out of this recruitment process what you're actually going to need for the role.
Yeah, and I think some of the best interviews I've probably had are where I've been given an example and asked, how would you prioritize this? These are all the tasks that you have to manage. How would you prioritize and why? And just having something where you have to think about and they're assessing, what you find important and how you work. It feels like it's giving you more of a fair shot a lot of the time. So, okay, so also, how do you think about bringing in more diversity and inclusion within a recruitment process?
Yes. So diversity and inclusion, big topic.
Yeah.
So if you look just at the process, at your recruitment process, what you should be doing is that you should make it inclusive in a way that people who, for example, process things differently still have the same chance. So that means, for example, that you should allow for preparation and, let people know in advance if you're going to be asking them to do a case or something, letting them know in advance what it's going to be about. So people who are, less outgoing will have the same chances. You can also consider adjustments with regards to the test that you're doing, for example, and making sure that the conditions will work for people, that they will have enough time to run it, that is going to work with their personal circumstances as well. Like, for example, if you're going to have, as part of your recruitment process, half a day on site of like doing stuff and presenting, like have a think of, I don't know, I'm a single parent and I have my children. What do I do? Like, do I have to pay for childcare to be able to come to your interview? So yeah, I think it's, but that's the same with all the topics around diversity and inclusion. It's about when you're building your process, when you're, like preparing the things that you want to do, that's the moment where you have to think about making it inclusive and making sure that you're not gonna exclude people from your process.
Definitely. So I think not excluding as part of what you're creating, what I've definitely heard as a question that's come up in my circles is, we're looking for, let's say, female salespeople, and I'm not getting any applications in, So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that you have to separate diversity and inclusion. So there's a part around attracting candidates and having them applying and having them coming to your company. But then there's another part of the work that I would say is even more important, about keeping them. And how do you make sure that they feel like they belong and they feel like they can be their best self and just contribute and being heard. So that's, if you want to improve diversity and inclusion in your company, that's the two things you need to look at. You cannot just focus on recruitment, and you cannot just focus on your processes. You need to look at both. But then, like, I would say the typical actions, if you're looking at improving diversity as part of your recruitment process, that's going to be either improving the pipeline. So that means that maybe you're just posting your ad on your website, and actually, like, those candidates you're trying to attract, they don't know about you, so they're not going to apply. If you only have, for example, all your employees who are kind of part of the same network and the same type of people, they're going to talk to their friend about your role, and they're going to be like them, so you're not going to attract anyone different. So yeah, there's definitely something around the pipeline, and making sure, for example, if you're doing outreach, if you're headhunting, that you do actually the work at looking at candidates that are not the typical ones or not the ones you have in your company. Like, you will always find the same schools or the same alumni from the same companies. So you have to do the work to look at different profiles. And then there are a lot of, specialized recruitment agencies or a lot of non-profit or organizations of all types that can help you targeting different type of candidates. And then another thing that's really important with recruitment is your talent brand. Because if you manage to reach out to those candidates that are different to the majority of your company, if they look at your website and they look you up on internet and the press, and what they see is just like so far away from everything they are, and they just don't feel like they're gonna fit in, or that like that's gonna work for them, they're not gonna want to apply as well. So yeah, there's a big piece around talent brand. If you want to attract more women, if you want to attract more parents, if you want to attract more people from ethnical backgrounds that are different than the majority of your company, that there's definitely a piece on your talent branding, as well as your pipeline and where you go looking for candidates.
And that's not easy, right? I assume there are probably quite a lot of businesses that have very samey looking employees, which is, we all have biases. We tend to hire people who are like us. And sometimes candidates are rejected because of this culture fit, So for an organization that's starting out and trying to have more diverse and be more inclusive with their hiring process, I guess, what would you recommend as steps to make sure that they are retaining talent who may not fit, the cookie cutter mold? Like, how do you make sure that people can bring their whole selves to work and feel like they can be part of a company that maybe looks different to them?
What is paramount if you want to improve diversity and inclusion is to make sure that your leaders are aligned and that they're ambassadors. Because there's no point trying to do anything if your head of functions, your managers, if they are not on board, if you haven't talked to them about it, if you haven't explained to them what you are trying to do, why it's important, and how you want to approach it with your company, then there's no point trying to do one-off type of actions and having your HR teams reaching to diverse candidates, because you need buy-in and you need alignment from your managers and from your leaders. And with inclusion, it's about applying a lens to everything we do. So it cannot be only in one part. It cannot be only, like the recruitment team that's going to work on it. That definitely needs to be something where your whole company is aligned.
Yeah. So, okay. So how do you think that once you're working with the core set of employees, how do you then get them excited and get them bought into this company vision? I think employee engagement is coming up quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say the first thing is that there are a few concepts that leaders or founders who want to work on those type of topics with their company. There are a few concepts they should familiarize themselves with, a few books they should read. So everything around intrinsic motivation, growth mindset, freedom and responsibility. That's the type of readings that would be recommended. Just to make sure that they don't do anything that's counterproductive, and just to learn from all the companies that have tried stuff before. So yeah, I think that's the first part, to make sure that you're familiar with those concepts. Then I'd say try and break away from practices that are not really productive. Everything like stick and carrots, and like having those very rigid annual cycles, and the engagement and the interactions that you have with your employee, making sure that it's not just a tick box exercise. So yeah, I guess it's going back to the why, and always having this, what are we trying to achieve and why are we doing that? Because if people feel that they're not being heard, that you ask them to do things that don't really matter, and that, you know, like it's not about the value that they can add, they're not going to be really engaged. So yeah, focusing on outcome is usually a very good one if you want to improve engagement, and making sure that, you know, people are aligned behind your vision and are just going to do you know, their best. And maybe it's not your way, and that's also why you're hiring other people, right? You don't want everyone to be thinking like you and doing everything like you. So yeah, it's just, you know, giving them the space to be able to find solutions to problems. And yeah, I think focusing on the outcome, you know, steering away from micromanagement, and just, you know, giving people the tools they need to do their best work, and then just letting them do it.
Yeah, leaving them to it. So I guess let's look at it from a manager's perspective then, because I'm imagining this is quite difficult to let go of, right? Especially if this is a process you followed for 10 years. You know, how do you move away from that annual cycle, like you said, and what is the better alternative?
Yeah. So I guess it's just thinking about what people really need and how people like to interact. Because if you think about employee experience, you can compare it to the way that people consume products, and, you know, how they interact with brands as well. And like, if someone needs a service, or has, I don't know, an issue with a brand, they won't wait to get an answer. You know, they want it now. And that's the thing. You know, we all have internet, we all have Google. If we need something, we're gonna Google it, and we're gonna be looking for it. So it doesn't make sense to, you know, to have to wait a year to discuss with your manager about, you know, your progression, your career opportunities, the way you've been performing. It needs to be continuous. You know, people needs to receive feedback when it's going to be useful, not when it's convenient for you, for your calendar, or, you know, whatever process you're trying to put together, but when it's going to actually have the most impact, and when it's going to help them getting better at their role. So yeah, I think like trying to move away from annual cycles, from, you know, everything, performance and development, all those type of discussions that you can have, and trying to be more in a continuous type of ways, is something that works better. And there's a lot of tools now, you know, that are available, that allow for, you know, pulse surveys and continuous cycles, where you can just, you know, at the end of each project, or, you know, anytime that it's needed, being able to discuss, to go back, discuss about the experience, how things have been, and, you know, what are the learnings, and just to do that in a timely manner, not having to wait to do it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of tools and frameworks that are available for leaders who want to try new things with that.
Yeah, I mean, you've also mentioned training. We've seen training programs fail because you teach someone how to do 10 things at the beginning of the year, and then when they need it, they've obviously forgotten whatever you taught them in the training because they don't need it right now. So yeah, I guess what makes that even harder is that you now don't have a neighbor to just be like, hey, how do I do this thing? Because I've forgotten how to do it from that training that we did at the start of the year. So remote working, right? It's made all of this so much more difficult. It's a huge challenge for companies to be able to even assess how engaged their employees are, because you can't see someone, you know, kind of slumped down at their desk. You just you kind of take their word for it when you see them in the weekly meeting. So I guess outside of the tools, you know, what do you recommend as a good way to drive engagement when you're working remotely?
I think in terms of remote working, again, managers, leaders, you know, all those people who will be having those touch points with employees, their role is even more important than before. And I think it's all about genuine interactions. It's, you know, taking the time to tell people, and we've heard that a lot, all during lockdown, but how people really feel and how they are really doing. And yeah, I think, just being able to have this this relationship that's authentic, and where you genuinely care for people, is what like most companies who've been going through this lockdown and remote working period, like the companies that have done well, that's what they've been kind of focusing on. And another thing that's important is to think about how you share information and how you communicate. Because if you're a company that was used to be in an office, and people would just, as you said, just talk to people if they had a question, or just ask around and go, and people would just hear something and they would just say, oh, actually there's something that may help you. That's all the things that disappear when we're remote. So there's a conscious work to do on how we make information available, and how people can find the tools, the information, the support that they need to do their role. And maybe that means that before we were, let's say, in a company where we had a big culture of just talking and saying things, and that means that now we'll have to start writing stuff and making sure that they're being kept up to date. But that's you cannot just move everything to Zoom, because it just doesn't translate. And even if people sit on Zoom meetings all day every day, they still won't have what you have in an office, with those side discussions and seeing and hearing something that's happening in another discussion and being able to jump in. So yeah, I think it really needs to be conscious about how we share information and how people have what they need to do their role. So that's the two parts. The first one about like checking on people and like making sure that they're actually okay, and the other one is about adapting the processes and not just thinking that we can just translate everything to Zoom and that it's going to work as before.
Yeah, I think, like you said, a lot of the work just needs to be done up front, and making things searchable and easy to read. In some ways, it will probably save more time and be more efficient. It's just a big transition in the way that people are working, right? So Yssine, I think we're coming up to time, but it would be great to hear from you just any other takeaways, coming back to our core theme for today, for any advice that you have for business leaders who are trying to use their vision to grow the business, and any kind of final takeaways from there?
Yes, I think it's really important to think about your customers and what they care about and what's important to them. Because I think we've seen a lot of examples recently, if you think, around data concerns and everything around data privacy, data collection, all those big techs, and this little war in between Apple and Facebook. Like it just brought to light this concern that people have and have more and more about how their data are being used. If you take a very different industry, if you look at fashion, we've heard more and more, all those concerns around, is this brand I'm gonna buy from ethical? Are their practices sustainable? And all the thing around fast fashion and the issues around, those big brands who are saying, oh, that's not me, that's my supply chain. I'm not. So yeah, I think, whatever our industry is, whatever kind of, work we're doing, at some point, something like that is going to get big. So it's good to know where you stand, where you're doing what you do, and what's important to you, before those kind of stuff just blow up in your face.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Yssine. It's been a pleasure having you. And I'm sure if there are any questions from anyone who's watching, they'll be able to direct them over to Staff Treats as well. We'll share an email address. But it's been a pleasure having you. And if anyone wants to find out more about what Yssine's working on, have a look at Thriving Tribes, really amazing consultancy. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Staff Treats, for hosting. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.